Well, hi, BillWhittle.com members. Today is Friday, the 27th of October, 2017. This is your daily Nexus report. And today, Decolonizing Yale. Decolonizing Yale. There's been a petition, a successful petition, I might add, to decolonize Yale. Let me read you from an article here. Previous requirements for the major, that'd be the English major, included 2 courses in major English poets, including Chaucer, Shakespeare, Donne, Milton, and Eliot, among others. But that 2-course series petitioners had deemed actively harmful due to its focus on white male poets. The series is no longer a graduation requirement for Yale's English majors. I want to deconstruct that paragraph, but before I do, I'd like to deconstruct deconstructionism. I first ran into that term, 20 years ago, something like that, way before I became politically aware or writing anything. And I remember reading some article where some guy had taken Shakespeare and deconstructed it. He'd taken all the writing and he just said, well, here's Shakespeare's cultural bias here, and here's his this there, and here's his this there. That's why he wrote this, and that's why he did this. This big long analysis of it. And I was so offended by this because, number one, I don't like anybody tinkering with my words as a writer myself, but basically, this idiot was trying to convince me that he knew Shakespeare's motivations better than Shakespeare did. That's deconstructionism. It was kind of the vanguard of this absolute plummet towards the educational bottom that we're seeing with things like this. Here's another statement from the petitioners who successfully tried to make it no longer a requirement for a Yale English major to have 2 separate classes in, English writers. This is from the petitioners. A year spent around a seminar table where the literary contributions of women, people of color, and queer folk are absent actively harms all students, regardless of their identity. I take exception with, well, needless to say, I take exception with the entire idea. But actively harms them, you see? It's not even just a question of deprives them, it actively harms them. If I go to Yale and I don't get an education after 4 years, I can't say that actively harmed me. I didn't get harmed by it. I simply didn't get what I paid for, which is exactly what's going on in Yale. But that's how it is with these people. You see, everything's got to be an assault because nothing beats top victim. If you can be top victim, that's the gold mine for the left. One more paragraph from the petitioners. It's time for the English major to decolonize, not diversify, its course offerings. A 21st century education is a diverse education. I'm going to stop right there. A diverse education that's entire purpose is to be diverse is not education at all. It's indoctrination. It's got nothing to do with education. It's just giving somebody a political bludgeon to beat you with. A 21st century education is a diverse education. We write you today, inspired by student activism across the university, and to make sure that you know that the English department is not immune from the collective call to action. Did you get that? We just want you in the English department to know that you are not immune to the collective call to action, because I have studied the collective call to action extensively. So when I hear them say, collective call to action with all the riots going on and the unrest around the campus, it's essentially blackmail. But actively harmed. Let me just say this about the diverse education aspect of it. It was a diverse education. You weren't just reading Shakespeare. You were reading Shakespeare and Milton and Byron, presumably, and all the rest. Now, people will say, well, they're all white males. They'll say that's absolutely true. But they're the best poets that ever lived. And we know this because no one can mention any significant top-tier poets, queer poets of color. Doesn't mean they don't exist or didn't exist. It just means no one's heard of them. And here's the main thing, and this is the point that really needs to be stressed, because needless to say, as a racist, homophobe, misogynist, I have all kinds of prejudices, but let me just make the point here in conclusion. If there were poets who were people of color or women or queer or all of them, and they could write on the same level as Shakespeare and Byron, then I want to read them. And I think the entire world is missing out by not reading them. But the fact that nobody can name them, and the fact that their poetry is not immortal in the same way that this is telling me it's just not out there, not as a large body of work. William Shakespeare, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is one of the three genuine freaks of nature. We've had many geniuses in the course of recorded history, and especially in the last 2,000 years that we've been able to track. But William Shakespeare, Leonardo da Vinci, and Albert Einstein, in my mind, are the three freaks of nature, where their ability to see things is beyond anything that we can comprehend. I like an expression that I think I came up with, and it's like a guy like William Shakespeare can be talking about the human condition, and it's a very complex thing. And instead of being inside the maze trying to find his way out, Shakespeare is above the maze. He can just simply look down and just trace the route out. That's the difference between how talented and brilliant those people are. That's why Shakespeare is Shakespeare. And that's why nobody else is either. So, Yale, what you've basically done is you've advertised the fact that you are going to compromise the education of your English department majors by making sure that they do not read the best poetry in the English language. Because if there was other poetry that's better than Shakespeare's or Byron's or any of those guys, I want to read it, and I haven't seen it, and it's not there, and we all know it. That'll do it for your Nexus report for Friday. We will be back on Monday, and we will see you then. Thanks again for your membership.